Last year, when we were just getting started doing this podcast, we did 2 episodes on Sudan, explainer episodes. Last year, when we were just getting started doing this podcast, we did 2 episodes on Sudan, explainer episodes, trying to explain what led up to the devastating conflict then raging in Sudan. For over a year, it has been the largest humanitarian crisis in the world. Things are only getting worse, a lot worse. Dozens of videos of fighters committing mass executions in and around the capital of North Darfur, El Fasher, famine, people slaughtering civilians, the world watching. Here's part 1, protesting a dictatorship in a dictatorship. Can you tell me your name and what you do for Human Rights Watch?
So my name is Mohamed Osman, and I have been the Sudan researcher with Human Rights Watch since 2018.
It began a little over a year ago. It's now become a full-blown civil war
14,000 people killed, 10 million displaced, which drowns out the numbers in Ukraine and in Gaza. We're talking about the world's largest IDP crisis right now.
What is it like being the sort of Human Rights Watch person when you're from the place that you're doing the work on?
It's different. It's more than a job. Some people would say, well, you can always take a break from work, but then I can stop working and still will have to check on my family and friends because it's my country. The anger around it, the anger around the unfairness of it, the anger about how he's forgotten, the anger about how he's introduced.
Mohamed, or Mo, hates the way people portray the conflict in Sudan.
2 tribes who just woke up one day and decided that they need to exterminate each other. This is not a tribal conflict. This is a power conflict. This is a conflict about regional interest, about global interest. This is a conflict when there is a world that years and decades ago said never again, and it happens again and again and again. It's a conflict that exposed a hierarchy of what lives actually matter.
This is Rights and Wrongs, a podcast from Human Rights Watch. Common reaction, I think, to Sudan in the headlines, stated or unstated, which is Sudan again? What's going on there? Didn't we talk about Sudan in 2003?
It's unfair, but it is nevertheless true that this genocide will be on your watch.
This is a 2-part episode.
How you deal with it will be your legacy.
Africans just can't seem to get things right.
Your Rwanda.
Uncivilized, untamed.
Your Auschwitz.
A place of chaos, illness, child soldiers, coups, civil wars, corruption.
Will be brutally suppressed.
We were brought up to believe that the UN was formed to ensure that the Holocaust could never happen again.
Sudan
We believe in
became
you so strong.
a kind of perfect
We need
emblem
you so badly.
that confirmed for lots of people those stereotypical ideas.
The thing that you hear about Sudan is that it's super complex, which it is. But the thing that I think about is how quickly we metabolize the story of what's happening in Ukraine.
Because we are united, Ukraine, America, and the entire free world.
Or how we as consumers love complexity. It's giving Dune.
لسان الغيب لسان الغيب لسان الغيب
لسان الغيب.
لسان الغيب.
It's giving Game of Thrones.
You're my most trusted advisor, my most valued general, and my
And so in this episode, here's what we want to try to do.
I've been by your side longer than any of them, Khaleesi.
We're going to take 3 people from the African diaspora to try to tell this story. First, you got Mo.
So my name is Mohamed Osman,
who
and
works for Human Rights Watch.
I am an African-American born in Chicago.
Then you've got Dr. Christopher Townsell, historian of Sudan at the University of Washington. Then me in New York City. So part 1, Sudan's on the verge of collapse. How did we get here? Next time, part 2, what's going on now?
Scene 1, 2003.
So where I start with in my undergraduate courses, which I will maintain until the day I die, is what maps can tell us and how important maps are in terms of kind of explaining.
Step 1, we need a setting.
If we looked at a map circa 2003, Sudan would have been the largest country, geographically speaking, in Africa. It is a ginormous country.
Y'all know Sudan on the continent, sort of northeast.
Darfur is a region in the Sudan larger than the country of France.
But
however, the kind of epicenter of national power within Sudan is located at the confluence of the White and Blue Nile rivers at the city of Khartoum, Khartoum being the capital of Sudan.
So I grew up, as many of my siblings and family members at the time, in our grandmother's house in Sudan, in Khartoum.
The blue goes towards Ethiopia to the east, and then the white goes down into Central Africa.
What language did you speak in your house, in your grandma's house?
So Khartoum is kind of, if you look at Sudan, is in the upper right, where the heart, if you will, of the country might be.
Khartoum is the big city.
So we all spoke Arabic. يا ولد تعال هنا انت ما بتاكل ليه انت بتسمع الكلام. And she was, in a way, probably a typical African matriarch, in the way that she was just very solid, strong, stubborn to a degree, and she had no fear, and she was a very loud person.
Mo, Dr. Townsell, and I are all similar ages. Mo is growing up in Khartoum, Dr. Townsell in Chicago, I in Tennessee.
Because Sudan is such a geographically large country, typically those populations in and around Khartoum have had privilege, a disproportionate control on civil, political, and military structures.
Anger towards President Omar al-Bashir, who ruled the country since coming to power in a 1989 military coup.
He was controlling the country from Khartoum.
So what happened in 2003?
In 2003, the country had already been involved in a very long civil war with southern Sudan. And so people in western Sudan, in Darfur, basically launched their own rebellion, right? They are very annoyed, right, by being on the margins of economic power. And a rebel movement is launched in the early 2000s.
Scene 2. Al-Bashir.
Now, Omar al-Bashir, who, again, had been in power since 1989.
Hashtag dictator.
Right. He responds brutally. And he says, oh, no, I'm not going to take any uprisings way out west in Darfur. What he does is that he uses middlemen interlocutors known as the Janjaweed militia.
The Janjaweed, these guys are very important.
The Janjaweed were basically individual armed groups, technically separate from the Sudanese Armed Forces, because again, the Sudanese Armed Forces at the time were kind of bogged down in a war against southern Sudan.
Official government army is fighting a civil war down in the south, but the Janjaweed go to Darfur in the west.
And so these Janjaweed militias, on Bashir's behalf, wage a relentless assault against the Darfurian rebels. These Janjaweed, right, these Arab militias start to embark upon ethnic cleansing. They basically embark on this scorched earth kind of total war campaign where you had black ethnic groups in Darfur like the Masalit, Masalit, who have entire towns destroyed. Darfur really was a kind of hell on earth. Consensus is that certainly multiple hundreds of thousands of people killed. Then, of course, you've got the number of people displaced, these scars that perhaps cannot be seen with the eye, but that are, still all too very real. Sexual violence, internal displacement, the whole bit. It was just really bad. And the world constituted what occurred in Darfur as the 21st century's first genocide.
Imagine all the people.
Imagine the greatest artists of our time united to save Darfur now. Instant Karma, the Amnesty International campaign to save Darfur.
Now, I remember the Save Darfur campaign because it was when I was in college. I was in college in Indiana. Dr. Townsell was in college at Duke.
So Save Darfur becomes, I think, also the 21st century's first major international humanitarian campaign.
And Mo was in law school at Khartoum University.
This was like the cause. Movie stars like George Clooney and Don Cheadle.
It's unfair, but it is nevertheless true that this genocide will be on your watch. How you deal with it will be your legacy.
A young junior senator from Illinois named Barack Obama, right, goes to Chad, meets with Sudanese refugees.
I think what struck me was how anxious and eager the people in the camps are to get the UN Protective Force on the ground.
There's this enormous Save Darfur rally that takes place in Washington, D.C. in 2006, and it was truly a kind of who's who, right?
Instant karma.
Which might be hard for lots of us in this country to think now, right? But in terms of a truly kind of bipartisan, cause, Save Darfur was really that cause.
Today, Scene 3, the ICC.
It was more than just talk. There were actual tangible fruits.
From a warrant of arrest for the arrest of Omar Hassan Ahmad al-Bashir.
Omar al-Bashir is charged by the International Criminal Court
for crimes committed against millions of civilians in Darfur for the last 5 years. His victims are the very civilian that he, as a president, was supposed to protect. In accordance with the law,
he becomes the first incumbent head of state to be indicted by the ICC.
Interlude: the Janjaweed and Hemeti.
The kind of large-scale bloodletting that kind of captured the world's attention, that ends, but there's still sporadic rebellion. Darfur does not successfully secede from the country, different from what happens with South Sudan. In 2011, South Sudan officially secedes and becomes the world's newest state, the Republic of South Sudan. The same does not happen with Darfur. But what's really interesting is that these Janjaweed, who were on the front lines, if you will, of conducting the 21st century's first genocide, the Janjaweed do not disappear. They actually move closer to the corridors of power.
The events in Darfur showed Bashir how to keep his power, and he turned to the Janjaweed in search of another protector.
They are made into a paramilitary force by Omar al-Bashir, known as the Rapid Support Forces.
But there was one particular Janjaweed leader that Bashir trusted the most, Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, or Hemeti.
One of the kind of main figures in the Janjaweed becomes this man known as Hemeti, who was one of the two main individuals at the center of the current conflict.
Bashir called him my protection, particular play on the Arabic word Himayti, which is my protection, versus Hemeti, which is his nickname.
When we come back, the people rise up.
Hi, my name is Tanya Lokshina, and I'm an associate director in the Europe and Central Asia division at Human Rights Watch. I used to run our office in Moscow, but after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the government shut us down, and all of the Moscow-based staff had to flee or face criminal prosecution. Our team is now spread far and wide, but does this mean that we actually stopped working? Absolutely not. We are working harder than ever before to document and expose the abuses by the Russian government at home and abroad. We do our utmost to support local partners. We have a network of sources on the ground. We continue to interview survivors of abuses, and we are doing open source investigations and digital data analysis. We do this to create a meticulous record of violations so that eventually the perpetrators can be brought to justice. We cannot do this work without your support. Please visit hrw.org/podcast/donate. Thank you.
يا ولد تعال هنا انت ما بتاكل ليه انت ما بتسمع الكلام.
Remember Mo's grandma? We love her.
She was just very solid, strong, stubborn to a degree.
We got to go back to Mo growing up with her for a second.
And she had no fear. And she was a very loud person. Until people start talking about politics. And you'd realize very quickly how the tone changed. People look left and right. Even her voice dropped down a bit. And she'd be like, يا غايته يعني نشوف اللي بيحصل شنو إن شاء الله كله تمام. She will just be like, oh, well, let's just delegate this. Let's pray to God and hope things will work out. My grandmother worries. She would always say to me, oh, I don't want you to, get influenced so much and get excited and you go out of the house and speak about certain things that can get you hurt. Like, okay, there is something clearly wrong, right? Like why this powerful, strong woman would have to censor herself when it comes to talking about politics at that time.
Now, Mo, like a good grandkid, did not listen to his grandma's advice. Now, there was a time that you were taken to prison, to jail. Can you tell me more about that story?
Scene 4, the early 2010s, the Arab Spring.
I was in my first years as a lawyer. We've been networking and discussing with a lot of activists from different parts in the capital, coordinating. And this was the time when people fed up about the dictatorship. Complete lack of hope about an alternative.
And this is when Mo went out to protest a dictatorship in a dictatorship.
So it is, think around 2012, which is basically coinciding with the momentum of the Arab Spring.
The demonstrations that erupted in Tunisia last December, sparking a wider revolt throughout the
Arab Spring,
were touched off by a young fruit seller who set himself on fire after being harassed by police.
This moment where it was right after I got out of college, sort of when social media went from like the thing that we did on our college campuses to like a broader thing.
So it starts in late 2010 in Tunisia, a change in the head of state there, and then just up north in Egypt.
Back to the map, Sudan is directly south of Egypt.
With Hosni Mubarak being kicked out in early 2011.
It's spreading across the Arab world, and therefore it's also touching Sudan.
But Bashir, his position becomes increasingly untenable, right? Because Sudanese civilians obviously are keeping an eye on what's going on in Tunisia, Egypt, the fall of Gaddafi, Syria, Yemen. Bashir's getting a little nervous.
We felt like the moment we're going to start chanting, thousands of people would join us and we're going to march to the palace.
Scene 5, the protests.
We took the bus, we split into different groups, so we're not followed. We were like 50 people, I would say, in the main bus station in Khartoum, which is very close to the presidential palace. We looked at each other, and there's a moment we realized we're going there and starting that protest. And there was a moment of like, yeah, maybe one of us not going to go home tonight. Like, oh, so maybe I will not see you tonight or never.
What did that moment, before you keep going, like that moment, pause there for a minute, like what sort of like was happening in your body? Like, you're like, did you feel anything, or like what was that moment like?
I think it's interesting. It's a bit of the adrenaline rush. I remember very well that I was having this conversation when this feeling started kicking in among us, and I bought some chocolate on the side.
Not Mo buying a chocolate bar.
I mean, the moment we started chanting that we want freedom and we want bread, few minutes, we were surrounded by the police. Actually, some of the street vendors in the market started calling the police on us. Oh. And for a long time, I was, we are fighting for you. Why are you doing this? But you realize very quickly, we did this fight from an elitist place. We did not consider that us protesting in the high time for the market, we are disrupting their income. And that was a very important lesson around solidarity and alliances. You talk to people as equals. You don't fight on their behalf. You fight with them.
Those are the lessons that Mo learned for the future. But in that moment, he was a little bit more, let's say, frozen.
I think I realized there was a bit of tunnel vision that you just can't see. I think then the police started beating up. And then people started dispersing, and then they started throwing some of the tear gas. And I think it took 5 minutes to kind of gather some sort of understanding about where I am at. And I realized I'm still at the corner of that main bus station near the palace. And then I remember very well, I was standing next to an old woman. She was waiting for a bus or something, so I pretended I'm waiting for the bus, but I was clearly followed. So this guy who came in 2-point-something meters grabbed me from my shirt, and he just carried me all the way to the police car. I was just chewing on my chocolate bar. And the old woman who was like next to her, she was saying, "Son, maybe you need to stop eating chocolate. It's not good for your health." And that it felt a very surreal moment.
I keep thinking about Mo just chewing on this chocolate bar as he's being carted off to jail. But there's one moment that sticks with Mo about this protest, which is how it started.
The first person who chanted was a woman. And I think that's very important detail in the sense that the former regime, in terms of the oppression and crackdown on civic spaces, it particularly aggressively targeted women. Having her leading the chants, it definitely created a crack into the system of having women leading. And that's exactly what we saw after, in the different moments of protesting and uprising, ending in the 2018-19 protest movement.
On December 19th, 2018, a revolution started to spread throughout Sudan.
Scene 6, 2018, a crack in the system.
By 2018-2019, the country under Omar al-Bashir is weakening. Remember how South Sudan seceded? Well, when they did that, they took a whole ton of money with them because
South Sudan sits on an ocean of oil.
Dr. Townsell and his maps.
So immediately, right, the economic situation in Sudan starts to deteriorate, right, with higher gas prices.
South Sudan takes something like 70% of Sudan's oil revenues with it when it secedes. And so Bashir ends up in this situation where he doesn't have a lot of money. But remember those Janjaweed and that General Hemeti? What Bashir figures out is, okay, well, the way that I'm going to strengthen my position, remember the Arab Spring is happening and his position is pretty weak, is by investing my money into the Janjaweed, which are now the RSF, Rapid Support Forces, and this guy Hemeti, who is my protector, I will spend the money on him. And really what causes a change is the prices in things in the country, because basically it's a budgetary issue. Like, he ends up spending something like 2/3 of the nation's budget on war and security, and not spending that money on the people, which means the prices go up and people feel the price hike, especially at the dinner table.
The price of bread.
Scene 7, the budget crisis and bread.
Which is so, I think, poetic because, one thinks about bread as being one of those foundational kind of parts of the human experience, right? But the price of bread had gotten so high within Sudan, right? While Bashir, of course, is basically pouring all of this money, all of this kind of astronomical proportion of the country's GDP into the army and into the rapid support forces, right? Really trying to maintain his grip on power, that it is the rising price of bread that basically leads people to taking the street, and that being kind of the proverbial nail in his coffin.
They wanted a democracy in their country.
And like Mo in 2012, the people rise up, including some of Mo's friends, in solidarity with people across classes, across groups, now in 2018, 2019, and start protesting. And they managed to oust Bashir.
We were building a democracy, this place of hope, of a vibrant civil society and vibrant activism, and then that got snatched by military dictators under, the watch of the world that allowed it to happen in the first place. And I think that even make it harder. Some people who are not really exposed to the situation in a country like Sudan, sometimes they ask me this question, right? And they hear about the conflict in Sudan, and they're like, oh, but it has been there for decades, right? And it's like, yeah, no, it's not. This is not a tribal conflict. Two tribes who just woke up one day and decided that they need to exterminate each other. This is a power conflict. This is a conflict about regional interest, about global interest. And I think I always believed that this war is war against Sudanese civilians by far and large.
Next time, democracy collapses and we end up where we are today, which takes us back to Dr. Townsel's idea about maps. Where Sudan is incredibly important. Sudan sits on the Red Sea.
10 to 12% of the world's shipping goes through the Red Sea. The only U.S. naval base in Africa is located in Djibouti, which is very close to Sudan. You've got Russia, who would love to build a naval base on the Red Sea, because if they have Russian warships on the Red Sea, it could very much destabilize both the U.S. presence, but also the supply of energy to continental Europe. Russia has faced massive sanctions because of its invasion from Ukraine, but it has used Sudanese gold to insulate itself from the economic impact of these sanctions. And then you've got Saudi Arabia, which has been actively engaged in conflict with Houthi rebels in Yemen. Well, Sudan used to help Saudi Arabia in that. So if you've got an unstable Sudan, now the position of the Houthi rebels, who are tied with Iran, right, that gets strengthened. And last but not least, I haven't even mentioned China, which uses Sudan for its oil. So the world is very much invested in the outcome.
See you next time for part 2. You've been listening to Rights and Wrongs from Human Rights Watch. This episode was produced by me and Curtis Fox, scoring by me. Our associate producer is Sophie Soloway. Thanks also to Ife Fatunase, Stacey Sullivan, and Anthony Gale. The archival clips in this episode are from France 24, PBS NewsHour, Dune, Game of Thrones, Channel 4 News, CTV News, Save Darfur, NPR, AFP News Agency, International Criminal Court, Vox, and The Guardian. You can read Human Rights Watch's report on Sudan, The Masalit Will Not Come Home, on hrw.org. See you next time on Rights and Wrongs for Part 2.